perspective, how customers look at this, and how can we actually build solutions that are robust in that way. I am a president of a nonprofit. It's a global nonprofit 501c3 called Pakistani Women in Computing. We are a global network of Pakistani women and their allies, and our mission is very straightforward: to learn, connect, and grow together. Other than that, I also volunteer at several other organizations as an ETHB as a Seattle leader, and Women in Code in the cloud tracks. If you have any cloud questions, please connect us on the Slack in Women in Code, and several other places as a mentor as well. Again, this is my LinkedIn and Twitter and Medium, where I do blog sometimes whenever I have time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as part of this session, or afterwards connect with me in any of these places. So let's start our topic today. So the very first question I have for all of you in the chat, if you can just write down, how many of you have actually used chatbots? Just say, maybe raise your hand, or in the chat if you can say yes or no. And then how many of you have actually built chatbots? So I have an idea of what we should be focusing more for the rest of the event. Yes and no. Okay, we use them but haven't built them. Use them but not built. Okay. Yeah, you can keep putting in the chat, and I will be looking at it. Mostly, I think that's what I thought, that most of you have used it. So in today's world, you have used some kind of chatbot. If you go to different websites, if you have an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home at home, at your home, you might have used some kind of chatbot in different ways. So you must have used it in one way, shape, or form. So we will be focusing more on how you can actually build those for your applications or anything that you do as part of your day-to-day work as well. Let's talk about it. So I just want to actually start with the very basic thing, which is defining a chatbot. It's really good to actually level set what a chatbot is, and then go into the detail of how you can actually build that. So this is the official dictionary of a chatbot, and it defines it in a way that says it's a computer program designed to simulate conversations with human users, especially over the internet. So there are different components here involved. It's really important to understand that you are actually simulating a conversation. When I'm conversing with you right now, it's basically one-way conversation right now. But if I'm actually having a conversation with you, it needs to understand the context. It needs to understand what I'm saying, why I'm saying that, what is the purpose of that. And human brain we are intelligent human beings, so our brain is trained in a way that we know that what your context is. For example, if I ask Amazon Alexa, what is the weather today? Alexa already knows that I'm talking about Seattle, Washington, because it knows my location, it knows my context. If it answers back that today is 79 degrees XYZ, I can say, okay, when will it rain? So it will know the context that I'm talking about as a follow-up question to the previous thing that I just asked, which was about weather. And that's very easy for a human to understand when we are in a conversation, but it's really hard to achieve when we are actually building these chatbots, because machines don't understand the context. They don't understand that this follow-up question is related to the previous question that we just had, or the previous chat we had. So those are some complex things to build, and I'm going to talk about more how you can build them more intuitively. And how can you make them in a systematic way, and what should be a best practice for that. So before going into the details of building that, I think I want to also level set what are the different types of chatbots. There's so many different types of chatbots these days. I define it in two high-level definitions, or two high-level different types. So one are pre-programmed chatbots, which means like they are rule-based. They're mostly Q&A. So you know that a person will do this. If they do this, then you do this. So if you go to some of the company's website and there is a pop-up that pops up, there's usually based on a pre-programmed kind of question and answer type of scenarios. Let's say if you have a problem with a particular service, so there will be a pop-up. You will say something, and based on what you're saying, they would actually divert you where you need to go. Those are fairly easy to build. Most of the e-commerce websites have those, and they are simple if then else rule-based kind chatbots. The second and the more complex one that I want to focus in today's topic are the AI chatbots. And those are gaining a lot of popularity these days, right? As I talked about Alexa, I talked about Google Home, I talked about Cortana or Siri that you are using in your phone, or even if in form of text, if you are typing something, these are the ones that are more mature, then they need more, these are the ones who are not that mature, but they need more time to actually build and be accurate. In the AI chatbots category, again, there are two high-level ones. There is a natural language processing one, which is based on understanding of how humans talk. So Alexa is a perfect example for that because it understands what you're talking about. It understands how you can convert that conversation into a meaningful answer, and then you can answer back. The other ones are the ones which are more futuristic. A lot of companies are actually trying to move towards that based on an existing AI chatbot, they are trying to train and predict what your next question would be. And based on that next question, they can better serve you in many ways. One of the examples of such kind of chatbot is a company that actually uses for their service endpoint. So basically, when you come to them and you have a service and endpoint, you connect your services to you connect your data to their service endpoints. And then if you have any problem, it can predict based on the service unavailability and can direct you to another service. And that is actually not a Q&A base, but it's actually based on the data that's coming in. And the real time, you can go and chat with the service and say, this service is down, what can I do? And it can direct you where you go. Very few companies are really doing this right now, but this is where I see the future, and there's a lot more to be done in this space. And there's, of course, a lot more to be done in the NLP space as well. Again, during the entire presentation, if you have any questions, feel free. If anything is not clear, you can write in the chat. I have the chat right here. I know it's a little bit awkward. My screen is here, camera is here, and the chat is here. So I'll be switching around and looking at that. So anything is not clear, feel free to ask questions, and I'll be reading them as I go as well. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I will not spend a lot of time on the benefits of chatbot, but the most effective way of how chatbots have been used in the industry so far is improving the customer service and improving the response rate. A lot of companies pay a lot of dollars to have physical people actually listening to your calls and then resolving your problems. And a lot of companies can save a lot of money if that is automated in a way. And then once you get to a problem that a machine cannot solve, you are actually directed towards a real human, which I know is frustrating for a lot of customers sometimes, but this is something from a company's perspective can save them a lot of money, because a lot of the time the calls are pretty straightforward. For example, people call to know what are your timings, people call to know where can I do the returns, what can I do. So most of the repetitive type of questions can be easily streamlined, or that's one of the benefits here, to streamline some of the business processes. Also, you can use chatbots for doing that. Personally, what I like chatbots for a lot of internal, for example, in Microsoft, a lot of Azure services, if our internal team wants to reach out to us, we have chatbots, so we don't have to spend our engineers' time to actually answer those questions. So we have chatbots that are built into our service that anybody can come and they can enter their cluster name and they can know what's going on with the cluster. They can see some stats over there, and they can chat to a point where they can troubleshoot. And if they can't troubleshoot, then we actually put an engineer on the call with them. So that is one way of engineering, that you can solve some of the repetitive type of questions that you are building in your teams from chatbots. So taking a deep dive into the customer service and chatbots, I wanted to really show the stats, which was really interesting for me. It's based on a survey that was done last year, which says that 40% of the consumers actually do not care whether the chatbot is a real human or a machine. And then the cost saving for that is 80%. So you can imagine that is 30%. So customer support cost is 30%. So by just doing that work, you can save a lot of money for your company. And then at the end of time, at the end of the day, the consumers do not care that much if their questions are getting answered. So it's really, really important to kind of dig deep into the problem you're trying to solve using your chatbot, and make sure that you've tested it with enough set of data that it's ready for prime time. So let's start talking about process of building a chatbot. I think a lot of us actually being coders or programmers, we just jump into real code and just want to build it. That's really, really the easiest way for us to do it, right? But what I've seen over and over with a lot of companies or customers that I work with is that they don't actually sit back and look at all of these 4 things that I've listed down. And if you don't do that, your chatbot is not going to be accurate, and eventually your customers are going to get frustrated really fast. So it's really important to actually go through these 4 steps and then actually start the building and launching and those phases. The very first thing is really important is to define the goals of your chatbot. What are you trying to do? It's really important to understand the persona of it. This is a really good new thing that's happening. A lot of these chatbots are gender neutral, so that the names are gender neutral. They're built in a way, the sound associated with that is also gender neutral. So so that they are actually inclusive, so they can actually get to a community or set of people who can all get the benefit at the same way. It's very important, especially in AI chatbots. You can easily make your chatbot biased if you do not make sure that what is the goal, what is your target audience, and how you want to actually target them. The second is important to understand the channel and how do you interact with your customers. So there are several ways you can do that. You can build your website, you can build an app, you can do in the Facebook Messenger, any of the social media apps. WhatsApp could be used as a messaging platform, or it could be a device like Alexa, or a service that you run on top of some device that talks to you. So there are several different ways to understand like where your consumer base is and how are you going to talk to them and how are you going to actually place this chatbot on those things. And then based on that, of course, your technology decisions would be different as well. So it's really important to understand that, define personas of your customers, go do your design thinking workshop in a way, take your idea to actually incubation. And then like how you launch a startup, think about your chatbot as a startup and think about end-to-end what you want to do with it. Don't just jump into code. If you want to just do it for fun, that's okay too. But it's really important from a company's perspective to look at end-to-end. Choose the way of creation. In the next slide, I'm going to be talking about how you can do it. There's like almost like thousands of different ways of building chatbots. There are so much open source libraries available. There's so much stuff in the cloud computing world that's available. There are companies who are only doing this full time as well. So you can use them to actually build those as well. So it's really important to understand what you want to do and where do you want to spend your resources on. And finally, once you have a minimal viable product that's working, you have to customize it, you have to launch it, retest it, get through a user base, list of question answers over and over again, train again, go back, and I'm going to be doing the demo of that quickly as well. So it's really important to actually think about all of these 4 steps before you actually jump into coding. And I wanted to really highlight this today. So coming to the point 3 in the previous slide, what are the different ways you can build a chatbot? And as I mentioned, there are like thousands of different ways. So these are some high-level ones that I have on the screen. One is you can build your own from scratch. If you know any of the languages, like for example, if you know Python, if you know C#, any language, it doesn't matter right now. There are a lot of open source libraries, and in the resources at the last slide, I have several links that you can do that. You can import those libraries and start building your own chatbot. Again, going back to the question 1 and 2 in the previous slide, understand what your target audience is, where do you want to launch it, and choose the right libraries accordingly. And I'm not going to go into that detail today because that will be a session in itself. The second option is to actually go with one of these builder platforms, and these are 4 or 5 examples. If you search right now, you can find like, I don't know, hundreds of companies. There's actually a chatbot conference that happens every year as well. So you can go and take any of these platforms. There will be some minimal fee that you have to pay with them, and then you can modify them, customize them according to your answers to the question 1 and 2 in the previous slide, and then actually go and build that. That's another way of doing it. The third way, which I would recommend, again, this is me being biased coming from cloud computing, is to build in cloud, where you can actually, these these companies like Microsoft Azure, AWS, or Google has actually built services that are very easy to build on. And all you need to do is to bring your data onto that, and then with a few clicks of a button here and there, you can actually bring up a chatbot very fast. And that's something that I'm going to show you a demo of that as well. So use any of that, and then you can use your data to train them and modify them and make it more accurate depending on your user base and the use case that you have. So in this session, I'm going to be focusing on the number 3 of that. Again, I have links for number 1 and 2 in my resources slide, and feel free to leave some questions here, and I will get to those as well. So let's talk about how do you build that with Microsoft Azure Service, right? So as I mentioned, like there are, that's one of the ways you can build it. And I think with Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google Cloud, all 3 of them have made it really, really, really easy. They have a very simple service that will take your data set, you will publish it somewhere. Eventually, from that published one, you can get an endpoint that you can integrate into your website or an existing messaging platform that you have, or any other place where you want to. And then you can test your bot over there, and then take the data back and then retrain it. So it's really, really easy. And Microsoft Azure, as I said, in this case, it uses a service called QAMaker. I'm going to be doing the demo of that as well to show you how you can do it. But it's very straightforward. You go to this website, you create your account. There's some free credits you can use if you have subscriptions in MSN and other places. You can build very fast import a knowledge base. Again, as part of the demo, I'll show you as well. Import any of your existing frequently asked questions type page into that, and then build on top of that. And they have made in a way that you can actually add context. So I will show you again in the demo. Once you add a question, you can add context to that. You can add alternative text to that. You can add how different people ask the same question. So all of those, something happened here. Next slides. Second. One second. No. Okay. So just, yeah. So coming back to the slide, you can still see my QAMaker slide. Yeah. Okay. For some reason the slides disappeared and then came back. Okay. So I was talking about, they've made it very simple, so you can add context to it, and you can actually add a way to understand what you want to do with the chatbot. There are several, 6 or 7, 5, I think 5 or 6 different personas also. If you can make a friendly chatbot, you can make a professional chatbot, you can make a witty chatbot which will do jokes in between here and there. So they've actually made the service really, really easy for anyone to come in and actually start using those. So I will do a demo of that shortly. That's one way of doing that. AWS has a very similar way of doing it. Again, in the resources, I have the links for that. You can go over and build that. I know Google has a similar way. And then the other ones that I mentioned in the previous slide, any of these services, if you look at these companies who have their own chatbot building platforms, they also have a very similar, they might not have a different knowledge base, they might be built into that, but they are very similar in nature, in that sense that you have to bring in the Q&A type knowledge base into it, and then build on top of that as you go and ask more questions and retrain your data and test it, and then make it as effective as you want for your particular use case. Finally, once it's ready and it's tested for a while with a set of users, you can actually deploy it in applications and you can actually start using it, right? And as I said, most of these services give you the connectors, and they give you a simple like kind of endpoint that as a service that you can actually integrate in your website or any of existing messaging service that you have. I will do a demo shortly, but I just wanted to kind of go over one other thing. Other than the chatbot part of things, there are a lot of other services that are kind of related to chatbots that are intelligent. So one of the examples, again, any of these cloud computing environments, if you go towards them, there are several of such softwares available. One of the examples, if you go and download this Intelligent Chaos, is something fun that I use sometimes before pre-COVID times, that you can actually take any image from the web and look at the emotion, appearance, pose, image quality, all of that. And the software behind it actually is visible to you. You can actually look at the code, you can see how they're doing it, and use this in any of your existing applications as well. This is one example. I will quickly show as part of the demo as well what other things you can do as part of the chaos. There's another fun one where if you're having a party at home, which is very hard to do in these times, but it can actually see emotions throughout the party. At the end of the day, 1 hour or whatever, it will show you in general like how many percentage of people were excited most of the time, were they angry, were they frustrated. So that is a fun way of actually using it. And at home, you can, if you have any camera, it doesn't need a very high DPI type camera, but it can take any of the image and process that for you. So again, these are some other applications of AI other than chatbots, which you can use, and they are a combination of vision as well as, in some cases, text. There's another one here for form analyzer, which uses any of the like documents. So if you have like tons of documents, you want to extract information out of that, you can actually input those into the form analyzer, and it will give you and then you can easily search on things. For example, from 200 different PDFs, if you want to search a particular term, it will tell you where it is, it will index it for you and other things. So again, that's another way of using AI in your day-to-day basis. So I wanted to just show to all of you. These are all the resources that I mentioned from Microsoft Azure. Other resources, there are several conferences that you can attend, as I mentioned, that are specific to chatbots. There's also an AI conference that are focused to that. And again, I will share these slides to everyone who's registered as well, so you don't need to worry too much about it. And you can actually go and look at these. And there's a very good session from Microsoft Build last year, which talks about end-to-end building a chatbot in Microsoft Azure that you can use. And I have the links for other services here as well that you can use in other examples that I mentioned before. So before I jump into the demo, I would like to take a few questions. I would also like to see the time. I think we have enough time. So I'll go through any questions about the presentation, anything that's not clear, and then let's dig into the demo and actually show you how you can quickly build chatbots. So I'll just go to the chat, or Kelly, maybe if you have got any questions so far, I can answer those.
I had a question myself while we see if any others come in, which was, do you have any suggestions of what sorts of goals are well served by chatbots?
Yeah. I think it depends on your business problem that you're trying to solve. So as one of the slides I mentioned, like different ways or different benefits of chatbots. If your purpose of your chatbot is to reduce the repetitive work that somebody is doing, so then you will set a KPI for how much % of the time you're doing this versus a chatbot is doing it, and how much accurately it is doing it. So I think it's really important for you to set those KPIs for the chatbot. The accuracy would be one, the response time would be the other one, how effective they are. Most of the websites, if you go to them, you see at the end they say how satisfied you are, and they do like a short stars, which is one way for them to know like if the chatbot was okay or not. So I think whichever way you can gather that data and kind of feed the chatbot back, that's useful. So I think those goals would be defined based on what you want to do with the chatbot. If it's, as I mentioned in my case, in our internal Azure services, our main goal is to, of course, reduce cost from having a physical person answering the repetitive questions. So that's very easy to calculate, right? How much how much is the cost for the service versus how much is a person hour that you have to pay them. And the second one that we do is like a lot of like internal questions, like other services who want to integrate with our service. It's very hard to us to physically kind of spend time with them and go over the meeting and all. So if we have built a very simple chatbot, anybody can come in and it starts asking about like, what's your cluster name, where's the logs, and it can parse through the logs and it can get to the actual problem. And if you can, and we also have links to solve most common problems that we know, like 404 errors or XYZ errors or whatever errors. And then if if it's a new answer, it's something new that we have never seen, then there's a simple click at the end that can take you and talk to an actual person. So we have built that chatbot that's very effective. We have got really great feedback of that, and we have improved it over time as well. So our goal was to reduce the cost, first of all, for a physical person, and reduce the repetitive tasks that a person or repetitive type questions that we were getting all the time. And then the third thing was for easy access to our internal problems as well as issues, and how do you solve them, rather than somebody spending like time to do that. I know it's a very long answer to your question.
It makes sense though. It's the inputs, which is people, something repetitive that is a person's time right now. And then on the other end, the ability to collect feedback about it and make the AI smarter. Because otherwise it's not really AI. So thank you for that. So I haven't seen any other questions come in. So just as a reminder to everyone, please throw any questions into the chat and I'll aggregate. And also at the end, if you'd rather ask a question in person or over the line, just let me know. So back to you, Muazma.
Awesome. So if, again, anyone has any questions, please let me know. If not, then I'll just jump into the session, to the demo. So for the demo piece, for the QAMaker, I think, as I mentioned, it's very straightforward. The website is the QAMaker.ai. When you go to the high level one, you can click on my knowledge bases. So I actually created a knowledge base for WWCode for this demo, and I'll show you like how you can do it. It's very straightforward. One of the ways is like when you click my knowledge bases and say like create new, it gives you options to import from an existing frequently asked questions page or an Excel sheet. So if you have like 2 columns with question and answers, you can directly do that. Or if you have a lot of time, you can manually go and enter these. In this case, I used an Excel sheet which I exported from a WWCode page, which has different things, and then I actually went in and improved it. How I improved it, for example, there was a question about jobs, and this is the link to get to jobs. But I improved it by, somebody can also say openings. That's a similar word for the same thing. So how would the chatbot know they're talking about the same thing? You can actually add, like, there's no limit of alternative phrasing. So you can actually add n number of other alternate ways of asking about the same thing. So for example, I can also say any openings. That's also the same thing. And you can keep going, right? And you don't need to worry about like spelling mistakes and stuff. So it's smart to actually know that when you are misspelling something, it's the same thing. But you can actually have an n number of alternative phrasing to be added to questions. And then you can also, what's very neat about this and other chatbots platforms as well, is to have a follow-up prompt. For example, if somebody has asked about jobs and then you have answered this, now I can have, are you looking for a role or something like that? And then I can connect to a follow-up question and then an answer to that. So it's very, very easy to do that. And it's all UI based. It can all be done in the API as well, but I'm just showing you the UI so it's easier for you to understand. And the first time, of course, when you're building the chatbot, it will require more time to kind of make sure that it's accurate. But as I said, that it's very easy. If you have already an existing knowledge base, if you already have a Q&A type place, you can easily import that. If you don't have, then somebody has to really spend this time to actually do that. Then there are other things. So I just added a bunch of similar things: members benefits, what are benefits to be a member, membership benefits, so all of these. And this is just a bunch of links that I will show in as a result. Again, this is just an example. You can make it very smart. You can also add, as I said, follow-up text, follow-up things, and go from there. These are other questions. You can ask, what's the vision for this? And what is WWCode? What is, in other several different ways, you can say the same thing. So this is one example that you can do it. You can do a combination of things. You can do like question answer here, and then also link to your frequently asked page as well. So you can do both. So though you don't have to do one or the other, or based on Excel sheet as well. So all of that. So I'll right now, this is already done. So I'll just test it. I have to save. should take only a minute, it says.
Muazma, does save and train mean when you click save, it's also adding the things that you input to the AI?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So all of the questions and answers are kind of getting trained, and if any alternative tests I'm adding, it's actually training the model behind it as well. So for example, I want to say this. Just wanted to show that this is it is working. So now let me ask something it doesn't know. So I'm just going to ask my name. Like, I have not trained it on my name. Yeah, it just gives you a default answer. You can change the default answer as such. So it says no good match found in the KB, in the knowledge base. So I just wanted to quickly show how easy it is to quickly add it. So I'm just going to add, I just clicked on plus add Q&A here. I'll just add my name. And whatever, I'll just say, I don't hope that anybody was going to ask this question, but just for fun. That's it. You can make it whichever font and stuff, and I'll just click save and train. So far we are in the dev test cycles. We have not published it anywhere. So it's basically right now here in the screen. It's not connected to any other service. It's not connected to the external world or anything. So it's saved. Now I'll just quickly test it. Let's see if it knows me now. Hopefully, yeah. So it knows. It's pretty fast. Again, this knowledge base is very small, so it's getting the save and train really fast. Over time, if you have a lot of different types of facets and stuff, of course, the save and train will take more minutes, and that is kind of equivalent to how you actually use any of the AI models that you train, any of the NLP type model as well. Now that we are ready and that it looks like we are good, we can actually go and deploy that. We can click on publish. So it just double checks everything looks good. This is the name of my service, QAMaker Service. That's the name I gave to this knowledge base, and I click publish. The moment I click publish, it's actually going to give me the endpoint or the API that I can use anywhere in the world. So I can use the Azure service, or I can use a third-party website or anything. So it doesn't matter after that, and that's it. So this is the Postman. There's a key which I shouldn't be sharing anymore, but anyways, that's the endpoint that you can use, and this is the way you can interact with it. So you can do a question, and then this will be your answer. You can edit any of these links if you want to change the names and stuff here directly, or go back and do that, and then it's ready to go. So this is a very simple way of Postman or curl command to actually connect with it. Or you can use another service in Azure to actually build the bot, which is creating a bot in Azure service, and then that bot could be deployed anywhere as well. So that is another way you can do. I'm not going to do that right now, but this basically, if you click create bot, it will take you to Azure portal, and there you can actually provide what tier you want, how many questions, answers you want, and then of course you will be charged based on that. How many, for every interaction, there's some package that you have to choose. But if you don't want to go that Azure service route, you want to host it yourself, you have this Q&A service ready, and now this can be deployed in any of your portals or anywhere you want to do. So I think that was about the demo for this thing. If anybody has any questions, I think I can answer those, or I can actually show the other services as well that you can actually use to kind of optimize and do other things in AI.
We have a few questions.
Yep.
So first, from Nancy, are there already existing knowledge bases that are available for purchase that you can take and customize to your needs?
I don't know if there are knowledge bases that are available, but I know they're available personas. So let's say if you want to create a knowledge base, this is the subscription name, you can name whatever, but there are like personas that are available. So you can do a professional, friendly, witty, like this would be the characteristics, and you can learn more about like what that means. But I don't think that there is a knowledge base that's already available. You have to actually bring in a knowledge base from your frequently asked question type page or something else. But that's a really good question. Actually, that's a good feedback. So
interesting. Thanks for the question, Nancy. Next one from Kathy. How does it handle misspelled words or phrases?
Yeah, so misspelled words are taken as part of the AI code itself as part of the model train as well. So there is an algorithm that runs in the behind. I'm forgetting the name of the actual one. It's a very famous one that is used to actually know that if you spell W-I-H-T and W-I-T-H, it's the same word. So most of like English common mistakes word, it's able to do that. And I also wanted to mention that it's available in multiple languages, not just English. So it's basically the model is when you choose a language here, in this case, these are all the languages that are available. And some personas are not available in other languages, so that would be something you have to look at. But yeah, the model itself is trained with that language spelling mistake kind of error thing. And I'll find the name of the actual model name that's used to train this.
Thank you. Another question, this one from Jessica. Can you give an example of training versus just using what was already specifically added to the knowledge base? What's the difference?
Yeah, so I think the training part, I know it's a bit confusing. So in the knowledge base itself, if I go back to the knowledge base, so whatever we are specifically adding is actually is the part that it's getting trained on. So the training part for the rest of it is basically the rest of the algorithm includes the spelling mistakes, like the common, like if you don't have a period in the middle, or like commas are missing, or grammatic mistakes and things like that. But the rest of it is all what you're entering here. So when I click actually save and train, it's saving all the data that I entered and then training the model behind it on top of the things of the capabilities that it already has about spelling mistakes and other things. It's actually doing the training of all the things that I added. So I hope that I answered that question. I know it's a little bit confusing to say that it's training because the model already has those features. And then on top of that, you're training with the set of data that you just entered here.
Could you say, even as like a simple example, it might, if you type something in all lowercase, it might also be able to recognize it, like case casting and such.
Yeah.
So that might be one example of training versus just rote data.
Yeah, so I will give you one example right there. So I don't have, actually, I should. So I only put like trained with capital M, but with small also it knows it's the same thing. But if I misspell my name, since my name is not, I'm hoping it will not know. I will see if it overtrained or like I do it something like this. I think it should say that doesn't know. Oh, yeah. So yeah, it looks like it can take multiple. It's trained well. So you can, if you think that something like that is suspicious, so during the test cycle you can inspect it and you can actually look at it and why it's doing that. So you can actually look at the call and alternate phrasing and questions and how it linked it and what's its confidence score and things like that as well. I wasn't expecting it, but it looks like it's doing so.
Yeah. No, that was a very interesting tangent. That was a good question.
Yep.
Next one is from Gurpreet, and it's, can this chatbot integrate with messaging services like SMS? Yeah.
So as I said, the endpoint that's available as a curl or a postman, that can be done, or you can go to the Azure bot service, and bot service has many different ways to actually deploy it. So again, in one of the links in the slides at the end, there is a video that you can go watch. It has a very detailed link of, if you are already using a messaging platform, I know a lot of places use WhatsApp or messenger based ones, so you can actually do integrate it with the existing messenger based or any other platforms as well. So yeah, it's easily available and pluggable.
Awesome. One more so far, at least, from Yoon Lee. Can you talk a little about the process of creating the personas, if this is something that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I think as part of the links also, there's a very good, I think it depends on who your audience is. So let's say if I'm building a chatbot for teenagers, right? And I know most of my audience is teenagers. So I have to be aware that they could be using slangs. They could be using a lot of like LOLs and I don't know anymore all of those words, right? So it's really important for you to actually understand that, and then build the person who is answering back has to understand and talk in the same way. So as I meant, like in the very first slide, I mentioned that it needs to feel like a conversation. So the persona in that case, whatever you want to define it, I will not label anything here, but you will define it in a way that a teenager can relate to it, and then they can answer. They feel like it's a conversation. So your persona definition would be it would be based on who your user base is, what are the most common set of things you want to achieve out of it, and then what type of interactions should it be. And you can also define, as I mentioned here, if I go back, this has few ones, like it could be a chit chat type, it could be a friendly one, it could be very professional where you don't want any jokes or anything like that. You can be something that's like really witty in that sense, like it could be just, oh yeah, hi, all of those, right? So it could be very, very that way as well. So yeah, depending on what you want to do, who your audience is, and what types of questions or things you want to solve, I think it's really important for you as a design thinking workshop or do something before you actually jump into coding to define what types of things are okay in the chatbot and what types of things are not. I also want to bring up one thing which was in the news. There was this chatbot that they made public. And within 2 hours, basically, the chatbot was training, and then within 2 hours, the chatbot was like, it was full of hatred. It was saying Hitler was the best, and things like that. So I think if you are the training part is really, really, really key. So if you have a loop back, like if you are taking the data back from this, so it's from the chatbot, when you deploy it using our service in this case, you can actually take all of the data that anybody talks to and take the data back to training as well, that there's a way to actually do it. If you deploy in your own service, I don't know of a way that it's possible or not. You might have to do it yourself. But it's really important when you train, you make sure you do a very good quality check on the things you're training and what are the right questions and right answers and what are not, and what is acceptable by your service or your company or organization. So it's really easy for a machine to learn something which is not good as well. So it's, again, I wanted to point out that when you're defining personas, think about that. We built the chatbot as a hackathon project last year for older people who have dementia and other problems. And we had multiple facets, so people can actually use videos to converse. They also had, like, for example, what's a toothbrush? So we actually showed them video of how do you actually use a toothbrush. And that chatbot was really, really, really effective. But the first thing we learned right away is that people who don't use technology so much, it's really hard for them to go and type. It's really hard for them to actually even look at the camera or things like that. So you have to find ways of what is the best way to communicate. For us, it was voice, and also the voice of people who are they familiar with. Especially when you're old and you have dementia, it's very hard for you to actually talk to a stranger. So that's one thing we learned. So again, defining the persona, depending on what your use case is really, really important.
Good question. Thanks, Yunli. I think that covers our questions.
Great. We have 6 or 7 more minutes. So if there are no more questions on the chatbot, again, for the AI stuff, I wanted to show the chaos that I was talking about. So one of the examples was this Face API Explorer, which is very straightforward. You can use any of the pictures. This is, of course, Microsoft, so you use Bing. So we'll use, let's say, Elon Musk. And you can take any of the pictures like this, and it will, in real time, kind of show about facial hair, any glasses, makeup, the emotion in the picture, pose, image quality, and things like that. And again, this is something, it's easy to plug in any of your code base already, and it's available in the GitHub as well. I would also like to show, again, there are many others. There's some in the beta right now. So again, you can test them and give feedback. This is an example of a form analyzer where you have an invoice, and then using an invoice, you can take the text out, and then now this text is available to be used. So it's very, very easy and very, very robust in that sense. This is another way of using AI and machine learning based models. So those are other things you can do with those. And this comes with a Q&A bot where it has different scenarios that you can use right away, like a typical company, a bank, or a Tesla, and you can build your own and add to that as well. So this is the last thing I wanted to show, just so that you all go back with, like, if inspired with other things you can do with AI and ML, and especially in cloud computing world, they are at your fingertips as long as you have the credit card. So you should be able to actually use those in your day-to-day. And again, coming back from engineering perspective, if you have a service, if you have some internal thing that you do, it's really easy to build these chatbots with any of these open source libraries. If it's more of a repetitive type thing, it's really, really easy. If it's more complex, if it has multiple contexts, if it has multiple alternate follow-ups, then of course it will take more time to build, but they are not really hard. A lot of these services have made it really easy to build that. And I think that's all I had for today. I can take any other questions, any last thoughts. Happy to kind of connect with you on LinkedIn. Again, this is my LinkedIn or Twitter and Medium. And I just want to leave you with this thought, to ask this question: will the future of chatbots be text-based, voice-based, combination, video? What do you think about that? Maybe in the chat, if you can leave that, that would be good. And again, thank you so much for being here, and reach out if you have any questions, any follow-ups, any issues, anything.
Muazma, thank you so much. This has been so informative. I honestly enjoyed it so much more than I was expecting to. I was like, oh yeah, chatbots, but then I was like, what? This is so cool.